Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man Podcast. My name's Rory Paquette, and I know you know that. Folks, I just like to remind myself how grateful I am to be sitting in this chair and doing what I'm doing. When we went to 7 days a week, you folks all showed out like crazy, and you still are. And I want to thank you for that from the bottom of my heart. If you're not out there doing what you're doing, which is liking and sharing and subscribing, I don't get to sit here and do what I'm doing. So thank you for that again, and let's move on. Folks, time for me to take a sip of my preferred beverage, pay a couple of bills. You all know what we're drinking. That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look them up, check them out. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful, just like my wife. They do all the right things for all the right reasons. They brew a mean cup of Joe, and they support veterans, which you guys all know is important to us, very important to us here at the Power Man Podcast. If you're a veteran out there, I want to thank you and your family. And that goes for our guest today for what you've done for us. The only reason we get to have opinions on this show is because of folks like you. Uh, Check them out, folks. Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look them up, check them out. I'm going to get one more sip so I can keep up with this, guy on the other side of the table from me who has more energy in, his thumb than I do in my whole body right now. So it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, there we go. You know I'm going to be drinking that through the whole show, folks. Go get yourself a cup. All right, we have with us today. He's a disabled veteran from the Navy. All right, and again, thank you for your service, sir. Native American holy man, and he's the author of Mystery at the Wyndham Inn, the Feral Feline, which we're going to get to hear all about. Folks, please welcome to the show, D. Paul Fleming. How you doing, brother?
Well, I'm enjoying my Freedom Hill coffee. That's why I've got so much energy on me this morning. That's a great sponsor.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man.
Freedom Hill coffee, baby.
Huh?
Buy it today.
Right
It'll,
on.
snap your salute and wake you up.
I didn't even ask for that, folks. This is just unsolicited. So this is what I mean. This guy's ready to rock and roll.
It's good coffee, man.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. And it's
And
what I drink all day.
if they want to steal my slogan, go ahead. It'll put a snap in your salute.
Right on. Right on. And he's saluting in case you're just listening and you're not watching the video. But no, I love your backdrop, man. You got the flag behind you and the whole bit. And again, thank you for your service. D. Paul, brother, tell us, a little bit about who you are, what you're about, and kind of where you want to start your story. We're here for
I was born 150 years ago, back in a time when,
it. Nothing's going to surprise me today.
right? Right? Where do we start with a guy like me, man? Where do we
Seriously.
start? Do we start with the with my first book, 2,442 Steps to Crazy, where I kind of let the reader know what my life was like before I was living on my own at the age of 14? Or do we get into the a date with suicide, where I dive in and explain to the world why 50 plus veterans are committing suicide every day, right? Or do we want to
And we're back, folks. I tell you what, we're going to have a couple of stops and starts today, so bear with us because this guy's bringing so much energy from the other side that this has even happened in our pre-interview. I've never seen anything like it. It's a little mystical, but you know what? We're going to keep moving forward. All right. So, D. Paul, brother, you had just mentioned about, unfortunately, the veterans who were taking their own lives. You were getting ready to move into your third point. It's yours. Go for it.
well, welcome back, Rory, and welcome to my corner of the universe, huh? Right?
Oh my goodness.
So my recent book, Mysteries of the Wyndham Inn, is still wrapped in spiritualism and really cool stuff, but it's a fun read. It's a lot more enjoyable writing than talking about veteran suicide and childhood abuse and all that stuff. That the message still needs to get out there. But Mysteries of the Wyndham Inn is just a great book.
Nice, nice. Now we've got your military experience, of course. We've got this part about being a Native American holy man. Are you Native American, or is this something that you've adopted?
No, I'm Native American, man, and I got a feather to prove it, baby.
Right on. Okay.
Okay, so now I'm my grandfather was jumped reservation. My great grandmother fled the reservation and bore my grandfather back in the ancestral grounds until government figured it out and wrapped him up and rounded him up, sent him back to Oklahoma.
Hmm.
And when my grandfather was in one of the boarding schools, he had enough and jumped ship and went and joined the Navy. Claimed he was white and rode submarines through World War II and retired in 1965 as a lieutenant commander. Got a nice picture of his grave up.
And we're back again because we're not going to be defeated. So, all right, D. Paul, you mentioned you had a photo of your grandfather's grave.
Yeah, he's buried up at Fort Snelling, in Minnesota. Anyway, we were talking about my Native American
Hmm.
history.
Right.
But yeah, I've got a bloodline that runs pretty long, pretty deep.
Sounds like it. Sounds like it. So you were raised in this, belief system and with this culture from being, a young man your whole life.
Yeah, when I was a kid, we were in a number of Native American groups and organizations. One of them was a North American Indian Club, which was kind of the precursor to today's. You know what? Saying it's a precursor isn't fair. It was a group that was made up of both the Pequots and the Mohican tribal members up here in the northeast corner of New England, or the
Okay.
southeast corner of New England.
Hmm.
I remember going to powwows and as long as I can remember. So I was around a lot of different Indian organizations, Indian tribes, Indian groups. So that kind of became the cornerstone of my childhood, the parts that I enjoyed the most.
Okay, gotcha. Nice. The Now, most of the time, when I hear stories about folks who have kind of grown up in terms of being surrounded by reservations, the plight of the Native Americans, that type of thing, there's an awful lot of awareness that that whole group was not treated very well by the government at certain points. Um, so it seems a little bit different to have somebody who was dyed in the wool like you are, who was raised that way, to then turn around and serve the country through one of the armed services. What led you to do that, and what brought you there?
Well, the Native American culture, in and of itself, has been a huge force for the United States military.
Hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the most highly decorated, I can't remember, I think it was Marine in in the country's history as a Native American. That was out of Vietnam. I mean, there's
No
some Native
kidding.
Americans who did, oh yeah, who got a number of significant um, medals and such during World War II and other conflicts. But
Right.
I can see the native's face. I just can't pull his name out. As he was a Vietnam vet, and he's got a Medal of Honor, and he's packed with a ton of um, you know accomplishments, if you will.
Wow.
So guys like me, our background, we're warriors. We're warriors at heart, and a lot of guys like me who are military warriors are also spiritual warriors. Because the two kind of go hand in glove.
I see. I see. What made you choose the Navy?
Uh, well, it was a gentleman with a very well tailored suit who had a big black robe that he wore when he sat on this elevated perch when he overlooked his flock. His flock and the marshals that made sure the flock was in line. And I had been homeless for almost
Oh, wow.
for a period of time, and when this particular gentleman in his pretty black robe, you know, wanted to see some papers, I went into the Marine Corps, and I couldn't get my mother to sign for him, but she would sign for the Navy. So my first choice was the Marine Corps. Next choice was Navy. I understand why now because I ended up following my grandfather's footsteps and riding submarines.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
So submarines too, on top of that.
Oh yeah. If you look over my left shoulder, you can see a picture of the USS Dallas SSN 700 doing an emergency blow coming out of
Nice.
the same boat that's the boat that Tom Clancy wrote about.
Nice. Nice. That was Hunt for Red October, right?
Yep.
That book? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Right. Exactly. The it wasn't the Dallas the one that sort of like came to their aid in that book?
So the Dallas is the key um, naval weapon force in the entire book. This is what the whole movie surrounds is the
Right.
USS Dallas. And ironically, a quartermaster who had just reported to the boat ended up getting dispatched to Hollywood for 2 weeks to be an advisor when they were making the movies. That movie was being made when I was in the military.
Wow. All
I,
right.
I
Cool.
was out in that boat. Right?
That's awesome. Okay. So how long were you in?
I did 6, and I got retired after that because
Okay.
they ran me over a couple times. Once with the boat, tried to kill me. No, didn't work. I mean, what I remember was going under, being crushed and rolled between the submarine and a surface ship over doing transfers. Man, next thing I know is I'm floating about 30 feet above the boat, watching them pull me out of the ocean.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Wow. Ouch.
yeah,
Okay. All right. Okay. So that ended that. All right, I got you after 6 years. The Now you leave there. Is it after that that you're coming back and diving more into embracing your Native American heritage, or was that going on the whole time? What's the story there? All right. So, like I tried to say before we got cut off again, was, when something like that happens, it's got to be an awful lot of healing required. That's got to be a really tough spiritual journey. Is that, were you able to lean into your, Native American heritage at that point, kind of draw on things you've learned? Is that something that you got into then? How did the two kind of help you get over that kind of that's got to be massive injury.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's still with me, So, but my Native Americanism, I mean, it's the one thing that I've always known was a part of me, and I've always had a very strong sense of my spiritual faith. I just didn't know how to point it in a direction or how to understand what direction to go in. But as I kind of went through life, I would always lean back on my Native Americanism. But at the same breath, I'm a big believer in the baby Jesus, and raised my wife was Irish Catholic and raised all the kids Catholic, but I also raise them from what I believe. You know, but as for my Native American part, I mean, I used to dance in powwows with some of my earliest memories, or the powwows, the drum beat, and
Hmm.
how it affected me, and how it resonated through me, and when a drumming circle is going, I feel alive. I can feel myself where I belong more than any other place, anywhere else in life. Okay, Navy, family, probably second to my wife. I mean, with my wife is the only one I'm comfortable with. But when I'm around Native Americans, especially drumming and powwows and ceremonies and stuff like that, then I am truly at home. So my lifetime now is wrapped in a true, you know, soul that's filled with Native American. I'm not sure
Nice.
how else to say it.
Okay. All right. No, I'm hearing you. The Somewhere in the middle of all this, you decide you're going to start writing books. And
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
something that is incredibly difficult for most people to just start doing. You're on your third one now.
Nah, my third one is published. I've got another one coming out here in a couple months, and I've got half a dozen more that are written, waiting
Nice.
for me to kind of move forward with them.
Right. So somewhere in this was that a chosen method of expressing yourself at that point
Nope,
in time? No.
nope, not
What
even, not
what
even
made you want to
close.
write, brother? What gets you into
Uh,
writing? Because I mean, that's just people don't just sit down and go, "I'm going to write a book," right? So
yeah.
what causes that?
Well, I swear to you, everybody says they're going to sit down and write a book. Okay, and very
You're probably
few
right.
do.
You're probably right on
Okay,
that one. You're right.
so that's one of the things that I've kind of learned is when people say now, "Oh, I'm going to write a book," and how did you get started? I usually ask a few more questions because they're
Right.
they're a long way from writing a book. But Rory, for me, it was almost. Well, it wasn't almost. It was biblical, right? I had no interest. My first book, um, 2,442 Steps to Crazy. All right, the beginning. Book 2 of that is sitting in my computer. I've got to just finish the last chapter and get it out, and people are clamoring for the damn thing. But I had no interest in telling my story. The Steps to Crazy take you from my first memory, right, until I was 14, and the cops were breaking down the door and coming through because somebody was about to leave in a body bag, and in my ear I could hear, let it go, let it go. Okay. um, you know so telling that story, I was raised in an incredibly abusive um, childhood that I didn't tell anybody about, nobody, not even my wife. And as I like to say, I've been married to my wife for 50 years. Okay.
Wow.
And
Congrats.
well, again, there's a little bit of wind chill in there because I think our actual number is 35, but if you factor in the wind chill, it comes up to 50, around 50 at that, so
I love it. All
factor in the
right.
wind
Good
chill.
enough. Good enough.
So, so when I wrote the book, which again, it took me about 18 months to really write it and process all of it, because what you don't know is when you write a story about yourself and you're telling your truths, your past, your history, you're going through a healing process as you're doing this. Now, did I realize that? Look, I know that's part of what was happening, but telling the story was absolutely brutal, right? And if I didn't have such a strong faith, I would have never written that book or A Date with Suicide, for that matter. Just because it's just too painful, and why would anybody want to listen to my story, right? Well, when the book got published, I was astonished at the response, starting with my wife. Because again, I hadn't said a word to her or anybody else about my childhood. When the book was done, I handed it to my wife, and she read it, and she didn't talk to me for days and days and days. And when she tried to talk to me, she would just start crying. So after a week, 10 days or so goes by, she looks at me and she says, I got to say this. You weren't abused. You were tortured. And when she said that, it kind of drew me back and made me think. It was one of those, internal aha moments, right? It's like tortured. And then I'm seeing, what happened to me play out in flashes and so on. And I'm like, a couple days later, I finally came to the conclusion that she was right. I wasn't abused. I was literally tortured. Okay. So why am I telling the story? Look, baby Jesus, I've done enough to tick him off. All right. I don't need to, tell him no after years of him flaunting a quill. He runs around with this quill that keeps yelling at me. You need to write, you need to write, you need to tell your story. So at the end of the day, I wrote the book because of my deep faith and the Great Spirit telling me that this book will help others. I didn't believe it, but I trusted my belief, my faith, right? And say, I didn't believe it, but I trusted my faith. Let me make sure I get that correct. And like I had said, the response from people has been unbelievable. I can't believe how many people opened up and started saying, I went through something similar. I've never told anybody. And the mantra became, look, you need to tell your story so that you can heal and help others. Right. And I am stunned at how many fellow vets have come forward. A lot of them can't finish the book. They'll read one, chapter two, and then stop. Okay. And some of them have taken, a couple of years to process it. And now they're doing things to talk about their trauma from childhood and move themselves forward. So the end game of telling my story is extremely rewarding. The process was brutal.
Cannot even imagine, to be honest. Wow. Wow. Okay. The second book.
Yeah. Where am I? A date with suicide. Boy, things are getting really cheery on this podcast,
I
isn't it?
mean,
We're
really,
going from
we're,
child torture to suicide, baby.
we're I, I'm not sure if we're going
You
up or
can't
down the
make this
ladder
stuff
right now.
up. Here, quick, get the back of this thing before the computer blows up on us again, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Right.
Who else have you ever met that can joke and laugh while talking about child torture that I went through, my own child torture, and preparing to talk about a date with suicide?
Yeah, nobody that I could think of right now. I mean, it's pretty heavy topics, so
It
I
is.
appreciate you writing about them. But now, is that your own experience with a
Yeah,
brush with it? Is that what happened?
absolutely. So in the book, the purpose of the book is to explain to people why 50 plus veterans a day are committing suicide. Everybody kind of works under this number of 17 to 22.
Right.
If you just simply do some research and look at Operation Deep Dive, it's a 10, 12, 14-year study that's now expanding to all states. All right. But that study alone and its reports show that the number is north of 50 all day long. if you're inside the community like I've been for decades, we knew 2022 was just a bogus number anyway. But I wrote the book again to tell the story of what happened to me and why. And here's the craziest part. I don't ever remember thinking about suicide until after I became a product of the Veterans Administration. And I write that in the book.
Hmm.
So again, if you look at my first book, right, Steps to Crazy, okay, as my wife says, I was tortured, and yet I never thought of suicide. Never, never. I remember to this second the first time I thought of suicide, and it was leaving the downtown Boston VA 40 something years ago after my first appointment with this organization of insanity. And if anybody thinks that socialized medicine or socialized anything is going to work, again, I'm not getting into a political conversation,
Right.
but go be a patient at the VA and see how much you like that healthcare system. Again, some guys do, guys like me, not so much. The purpose behind writing it is about telling my story and the story of vets around me. And I'll kind of close that loop with this. A couple of years after I came out of the military, a yeoman had reached out to me, a guy I served with on the boat, right? Hadn't seen him in a few years. And he says, hey, I want to get together and I need to talk to you. And that was the big thing. He said, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay. Haven't seen you in years. Super Bowl's in a week from now. So we'll get together. I've got a wife. I got a family now. I'm doing all this grown-up stuff, right? After you come out of the military, it's funny how you look around at that stuff and say you're doing this grown-up stuff. So, a week goes by. I pick up the phone. Remember when there were landlines and cords and,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
anyway.
yeah.
So I pick up the phone and call the number he left me, and this woman answers. I don't know this woman from Adam. And I says, hey, listen, I need to talk to Randy. And she goes, who the fuck is this? And I'm like, oh, man, here we go. All right, listen. Randy called me last week. We're going to get together. He wants to talk. She starts cussing me out, going off the deep end, yelling at me. I'm like, what did I do here? Okay,
Right.
lady, you haven't even met me yet. Why are you screaming at me? Meet me first, will you? Well, finally said to her, look, either put Randy on the phone or I'm hanging up. I ain't got time for this crap. And there's a pause on the other end. And she says, you don't know, do you? I said, I don't know what, lady. She goes, oh, you're the guy. You're the guy from that damn boat. Pause, pause, pause. He's not here. He hung himself right after he got off the phone with you. Don't ever call here again. Click. That was my introduction to veteran suicide.
Wow. Ouch.
In that story, in the back of my head, and the whispers from the spirit world, remember what this felt like. Remember what this felt like. The pain that accompanied me, the guilt of not going when that shipmate asked me or called and said, I need to talk with you. That guilt stayed with me until I wrote the book. Now I can tell you that I don't feel guilty anymore. I feel the residual memory of feeling guilty, but I don't have that angst of guilt that I should have or could have or would have done something.
Yeah.
All of my spiritual advisors through the decades now have told me the same thing. That whole suicide was planned so that you, in the end, would tell a story. Okay, now that gets deep into personal beliefs and all
Sure.
these things, but I
All right, back after another break, but here we are. Deepal, listen, you were talking about how the reason this happened, sort of, in the overall big picture, was because you were supposed to write this book, and I was, sitting here thinking to myself, is this written for the guy who's thinking that he doesn't have any other option but to take his life, or is it written for the guy who is getting the phone call to say, hey, you don't know what's happening on the other end? Who'd you write the book to?
so I wrote the book to everyone who wants to understand why people are killing themselves. Okay, my focal point is obviously veterans, right?
Hmm.
because that's what
Right.
my experiences are. But the book is universal. It not only speaks to anybody who has or has suicidal ideation. The crazy part is that the majority of people who have read my book are not veterans. They're actually family members of veterans,
Uh,
spouses, parents, siblings, friends. Okay. And a ton of interest from the mental health community. I mean, I got one review on this where a lady had reached out and said she did 20 years as a psychiatric trauma nurse, right? Not even sure what the hell that means, but it sounds impressive, right? She said that after 20 or 30 years, I can't remember which, of practice, she could not get a single veteran to explain to her, talk to her, open up about why they were suicidal. Okay. And as I'm looking at this and I'm saying, yeah, that seems about right. So she said my book was the first time in her professional career that she was able to get an understanding of why veterans are killing themselves at the rate they are. So at the end, the book has had a profound impact on anybody that's kind of in that space or around that community.
Appreciate you doing that and appreciate you writing it, man. It's obviously having an impact and going to continue to do so. And I'll make sure that there's links to these books in our show notes for everybody. Our shutdowns are taking time away from our interview, unfortunately. So I'm like, we're having to move on a little bit because we could probably spend the whole episode just talking about that topic. So I may have to have you back on and go through this fight again. But
Listen, I love what you do. I think you're very, very good at it. And don't forget Freedom Hill Coffee, baby. That's what makes all this magic happen. So we've got to have our coffee.
right on.
Happy to be back here anytime, Rory.
I appreciate that, man. I do. Before we wrap, though, I want to make sure that we get this out because your most recent book is Mysteries at the Wyndham Inn. And this seems like maybe it's a little bit more lighthearted. There it is. Mysteries at the Wyndham Inn, the feral feline. Tell us about this. What made you, sort of take an upswing in mood, with this book? What's it about? Who's it for?
Well, again, everything around me is driven by spirit. Okay. Whether it's a bird chirping or a hawk screeching high above the tree line. In this particular, what was the catalyst that got mysteries moving for me? Well, um, a friend, somebody I hung around with up through eighth grade, and then he kind of went one direction in high school. I went another. He just showed up at my house out of the blue and, started telling me about this black cat that when he lived at the Wyndham Inn, he would have this dream of this black cat and it would attack him, and he would jump out of his bed and his pillow would be around him. He'd throw his pillow and he would search everywhere, but he couldn't find this cat. But when he looked in the mirror and he saw the scratches, okay,
Hmm.
he's like, was that cat scratching me or was that me scratching myself? When his girlfriend saw the scratches on his back in three, okay, she said, you have some explaining to do. Okay. So he went down the path of it was the black cat to his girlfriend. So he stuck to his story and he told me he stuck to that story for 30 years. But when he came and started telling me that story, that's when the spark started kicking and I could hear the spirit world saying, there's your, you need to tell this story. And I'm saying, why? Right? Why? Okay, it's a cool story. But the messaging for all of my books is the same. And in part, it surrounds telling your story. So why are so many ghosts? Because again, I don't just not just a Native American spiritual man, but the common phrases that people would understand would be a psychic or a medium or an empath, right?
Hmm.
So I have all those abilities. So I'm always listening to ghosts, hearing ghosts, seeing ghosts, so on and so on. Right. Well, why are ghosts stuck here? It's a fundamental question. Every ghost hunter out there is trying to ask the ghost, why are you stuck here? Many of them are here in part because they didn't get to tell their story. So a lot of the ghosts that still live inside the Wyndham Inn, and again, this isn't just a pretty picture. This is an actual picture of the Wyndham Inn as it stands present day. Okay. And if you look at some of the pictures I posted online of the windows and you see all these orbs and faces plastered all over the place, those ghosts are still trying to tell their story in part so that they can move on. So it's not just us as the living that need to tell our stories. So too are the ghosts and the spirits that are buzzing around. Not all of them, but you get the sense of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Nice. So is the book just about the one story, or is the book about all the stories and why?
So this is book one.
Uh-huh.
There's four books that are kind of book two is already almost done with editing.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay.
Book two picks up where this book leaves you in a cliffhanger that has people um, sending out 5-star reviews with words like, "You suck. You left me on such a cliffhanger. I can't believe you. Bang, bang, bang. Why you I oughta." Okay. I mean, it's literally like a Three Stooges routine. Listen how mad these people get because I put where I left it. I need
Right.
the next book. It's like, okay, it's coming, it's coming. But there's four books already in this one. There'll be a lot more than four, but you know, uh, those are the four that are kind of done or in process.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I hate you. How could you do this to me? 5 stars.
Right?
Okay.
Right? I mean,
Fair trade.
you missed the key word. You suck.
You suck.
I mean, literally, 5-star rating. You suck. LOL. Where the hell do I begin? She says.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice. All right.
But it's a fun read. And if you love anything to do with the paranormal or ghosts or ghost stories, this is just great. But it's got a lot of life lessons in it.
Hmm.
And I spill a lot of my Native American beliefs into it with the sage and so on, and how to clear and cleanse and protect yourself. So, it's some people have said, is it a historical fiction book? And I say no, it's a historical fact book because the narrator is actually telling the story. Um, I'm sorry, the narrator is telling the story throughout the book as she sees fit. Okay. So the
Hmm.
story is that almost 300 years ago, this woman was hanged not once, but twice. Okay. And her father was within musket shot when the noose stopped twitching the second time. The woman and her father both put separate curses out there. Okay. That's the baseline of the story. Right. And that's 280
Wow.
years ago. Yeah.
Wow. All right. And so through the course of the story, is it the characters that are putting into place these protective measures that you're talking about that you're like teaching folks?
Yes, sir.
I see.
Yes,
Got it.
sir.
All right. All
Oh
right.
yeah.
Very cool.
So it's not just telling a ghost story, but and showing people how to help ghosts move on, and telling these legacy stories that until they're told, this woman can't move on. That's why she's been seen on the grounds. I was just on a interview for the radio station in hometown where the Wyndham Inn is.
Hmm.
This Wayno in the Morning. Okay, he's been around for I think 50 years. All right in the heart of romantic Willimantic, where the story takes place. And he starts telling me about the ghost of Miss Elizabeth and how she walks up on the hill over here. And I says, yeah, that's because her and the angel that hangs out at St. Joseph's Church kind of work in tandem, right? And his eyes got big and he says, are you talking about the Shaws from the Wyndham Center? And I says, yes. He goes, they're the ones that have told me all these ghost stories. So this woman, this spirit has been seen for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, so I mean, there you go. That's what's going on in this book. Holy cow.
A fun read,
All
man.
right. Do we have and this is a series of this kind of stuff just with different stories. And so the next book that's coming out, do you have an idea of when that is or what that's going to be about? Can you tease that a little bit?
Yeah, so when you get through book one, bang, 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 it picks up right where the banging leaves off. Okay. And
Okay.
you're going to be astonished what happens.
That's awesome.
Book two is titled The Feral Feline Meets the Pesky Orb. Okay.
Okay.
So it's a continuation of book one. And then when you get through book two, it's going to dovetail right into book three, which is The Hanging of Miss Elizabeth. Okay.
Okay.
So book three starts out with the old wooden carriage and the old pissed off mule who's carting this woman who's about to be hanged in the middle of December, okay, in New England, right?
Perfect. So the series is Mysteries at the Wyndham Inn. And so each
Yes.
book is Mysteries at the Wyndham Inn, the series, and then separate titles for each edition that you put out.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
the subtitle is changing, but the main title of
All right.
mysteries is always going to be the mysteries at the Wyndham Inn.
Right. And that helps folks to be able to go look it up. If you look up the mysteries of the Wyndham Inn, you're going to be able to like get all of them once you start putting these things out. So, are you working with a publisher? Are you self-publishing? How are you handling that part of it?
So I've had some interest in publishers, but they want to do things like um, correct spelling. Okay. And in the mysteries, you can't correct the spelling because even the title, Mysteries, apostrophe S, is intentional because what I'm trying to what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to write this story as the spirit world is telling me this. But what they're telling me is there are mysteries inside the mysteries. Okay. So there is
Hmm.
coded, there's coding in here that people have to figure out. One person has already reached out and said, I think I broke this code. And I said, yes, you did. Okay. All right, but I can't say any more.
Right.
Whoever digs into this series and figures out there are treasures to be found inside the mysteries of the mysteries. Now here's it really gets wild. The folks that bought the Wyndham Inn, they've been working on it now for a couple of years to turn it into a museum. Okay. When they were doing some demolition work, they opened up a secret wall that had a bunch of stuff buried behind this wall. Okay. That hasn't been touched in hundreds of years. Okay. Now I know what they uncovered because I can hear what the spirit world's telling me, but they have no idea what they opened up. Right. And inside the mysteries of the mysteries, it unfolds what they released when they broke that wall down.
Wow. All right. Well, again, I could keep talking to you about all this stuff, until the cows come home, man. But the spirit world did not want us to have more time today. So we're going to have to take a second shot at this and we're going to have to wear them down. But for today, we got over the books. We got to talk about you a little bit. We've introduced you to our audience here. I appreciate you accepting to come back on because the invitation is there. So we will get that scheduled and we'll get that worked out to get you back on here and we'll talk some more about everything going on with you and your life and your books. Um, as we kind of round out today, uh, any sort of word of advice, parting thoughts, anything like that for the folks who are listening on anything we talked about today? I'm going to let you just sort of let spirit guide you wherever you got to go and give everybody a leave behind.
Well, I think with somebody talented like you, there might be a podcast out there titled "The Mysteries at the Wyndham Inn." Hmm. Hmm. Hey, listen, it was great. It was great to be on your show. I think you guys are doing great things. I think you got the right coffee brand. Okay, Freedom Hill Coffee. Get out there and get a bag and enjoy your morning because it'll put some snap back in your salute. Now, listen, I appreciate everything and thank you so much for letting me ramble for a little while. Keep the faith, keep moving forward.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. All right, gentlemen, that's been another fantastic episode of the Power Man podcast. And the reason we bring these powerful men on here with these powerful messages is because we are absolutely united in you regaining your power so that you can become a better protector, better provider, better leader tomorrow than you are today, so that you can become a better husband, a better father, a better man tomorrow than you are today. And the reason that we want that for you is because you have value. It's because you matter. And folks, at some point, you just have to believe it. Till until next time.